Hey everyone, Ray here. Right, this time around we have every latest flagships from almost all major manufacturers, and we have only one task to do, and that's for sure draining the battery from 100% all the way down to 0. Without further ado, this round of our battery drain test we are going to have the iPhone 17 Pro Max, the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra, the latest and greatest from Sony, the Xperia 1 Mark 8, the Holy Trinity camera flagships, the Xiaomi, Vivo and Oppo Ultra phones. Now here's the interesting touch to this video, the Oppo Find N6, and it's got a 6000 mAh battery inside. Now the only other foldable joining the race is the Honor Magic V6. It's actually got a 6660 mAh battery inside this razor-thin chassis. And here are the only two phones which have got a battery that is larger than 7000 mAh, the Honor Magic 8 Pro. The global version here is featuring a 7100 mAh battery, while the mighty camera phone, the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, has got a 7050 mAh battery on the global version. And last but not least, here we've got a 6600 mAh battery on the Vivo X300 Ultra and a 6000 mAh one on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. Now, are they really going to crush the Sony, Samsung and the iPhone when it comes to battery life in the real world? We'll be looking into battery consumption per task, battery optimization during overnight idling, and who's got the best AI photo editor as well along the way. Speaking of photo editing, here on the iPhones I've already updated it to iOS 27, the developer preview, so we have the smarter Siri AI, as well as the newly vamped up photo editing tools. Now when it comes to battery life, as we've gone through the same test on the iPhone for quite a few times, by comparing the results I can clearly tell the software update isn't affecting battery life. So if you're an iPhone user and you'd like to try out the newly added AI features on your particular phone, apparently it's not going to hurt your battery life. Right, keep the long story short, just before the start of this battery drain test, let's calibrate the display brightness here across all the phones on the bench to 250 nits for a fair comparison. Now, as it's nearly impossible to set it to exactly 250 using the default slider, so there will be a slight margin of error, so I tried as hard as I could controlling the brightness across all of them to be plus or minus 3 nits around 250, and I used a portable charger to make sure the battery level will be staying at 100% here across every phone while calibrating the display brightness here. As you can see here, both the time and the battery level is at 100% across all of them. Let's start. Now, if you're familiar with my previous battery drain test, I'm using the exact same testing methods here, so you may actually just compare the results here to every phones we've tested previously. The only difference here is we're testing it with the latest generation of phones. And as promised, this video is so much more than just numbers and figures. To start off with, the upcoming hour, we'll be using the built-in photo editing tools here across every phone, editing the same set of photos. This way we'll actually be able to compare their photo editing tools as well. Here I'll be removing a passerby, in this case it's actually me myself, but the key is the iPhone's now actually able to generate the circular structure here on the metal gate, just like the one we've got here on the Galaxy and the Sony using Google Photos. The iPhone's actually got perfect texture for the stepping stone as well, and just look at behind the metal gate, it's actually got the chairs which were stacked on top of each other pretty precisely as well. So when it comes to the overall usability of the image, I would say the iPhone, the Galaxy and the Sony using Google Photos all scored an S here. Time for the Xiaomi, Vivo and Oppo to shine. Now they've all successfully removed whatever that was covering the metal gate and generated a realistic metal gate here. So the artwork behind it and the texture on the stepping stone here, that's an A, totally usable but not the absolute best here. Finally, we've got the Honors. It's got the main subject removed as well, and the metal gate is actually pretty realistic. It's a solid 6, it's a B. Here, I must point out, Google Photos always there for you, even on the iPhone, just a few taps away. So we're finally getting a decent one, and indeed good one on the iPhone, as we've got 3 different levels of image quality for the AI-generated photos. Now, the high-quality selection, I've actually tried it out. Image quality is indeed much better than if we're using auto mode, though it is indeed taking a whole lot more time to generate a photo. For the upcoming set of photos, we're trying to remove the headset covering my ears and the jawline, and see if they're able to remove the object that is covering my ear and generate realistic texture. Once again, the iPhone's finally doing a good job here, while the Galaxy and the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8 using Google Photos all doing an S-tier job here. They've even got the fine texture here on the artificial ear that's been planted onto my face. Right, the Xiaomi and the Vivo's actually done an alright job as well, though I've got kind of a funky ear here on the Xiaomi, and the texture here on the Vivo's also not as great as that we've got on Google Photos, the iPhone and the Galaxy. And Oppo's given up entirely. Finally, here on the Honors, it's not trying to generate an ear that is not present in the original photo. Once again, I think it's fair to say it's a solid 6, it's a B-tier photo. It's like my hair's grown a little bit longer than usual, covering my ears. Right, as we're passing the 15 minutes mark of the battery drain test, the third set of photo, it would be a total nightmare for the iPhone before the iOS 27 update. Now let's see if it's able to generate the missing part of my hand. Bravo, they've finally done a surprisingly good job here. Now moving on to the Galaxy and the Sony using Google Photos. Right, that's realistic as usual. What about the Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo and Honor? To start off with, we'll be taking a closer look at the photos generated by the iPhone, the Galaxy and the Sony. Once again, they've all got an S here. Not only have they got the texture and the hand gesture pretty accurately, but also very persuasive texture for the building and the trees there on the background. Right, the Xiaomi is actually able to remove the ice cream that was originally covering my fingers, but the texture there on the background, the building and the trees seems to be a little bit off. But it's still a more usable photo if compared to the one generated by the Vivo and the Oppo. Once again, Google Photos can be the ultimate backup here. And Honors removed both the ice cream and my hand, which I was trying to recover once and for all. The interesting bit is here, both the Oppo Find X9 Ultra and here the Oppo Find N6 actually replaced the ice cream with another object. So in this case, the iPhone, the Galaxy and the Sony using Google Photos generated a more persuasive photo. So this particular one, we might have just come across the limitation here on the iPhone, as on the Galaxy and the Sony using Google Photos, we can simply circle and select the passerby, which is taking up a larger area of the photo. In this case, it's me again. I was covering a statue with more complex texture. On the iPhone here, it's actually asking us to circle a smaller area, while the Galaxy and the Sony using Google Photos, especially the one generated by Google Photos, it actually looks realistic. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same as the original masterpiece, though the Galaxy's actually got some creativity here, replaced me with another statue that's generated by AI. What do you think? Would you prefer the flexibility offered by Google or the authenticity here on the iPhone? Right, time for the Vivo, Xiaomi, Oppo and Honor to show their AI powers. All of them here is actually done a pretty good job and delivered a photo that is sort of realistic. The one generated by the Xiaomi is actually not bad at all, while the Vivo and Oppo, they've given the statue some life here. And finally, the Honor's doing an alright job here as well, though it's either the texture being a little bit too smooth or some part of the statue is missing. Alright, it's approaching 30 minutes into our battery drain test, and the next set of photo, it's a rather challenging one as well, as I was having some interaction with the deer in the frame. Now this time around, let's try to remove me once again and having a cleaner photo with only the deer. Surprisingly, the iPhone's not offering the flexibility here for this particular scene as well, while the Galaxy and the Sony using Google Photos absolutely done a breathtaking job here. It's like I wasn't there at all from the very beginning. Vivo's actually nailed it this time around as well, generated a really persuasive photo. Now both the Xiaomi and the Oppo actually tried. Honors also tried as hard as they could, though it's quite fair to say the Galaxy, the Vivo and Google Photos doing a better job here, though I was really trying to push it to the limit. Alright, the upcoming one's also a rather challenging one, as not only was I taking up quite a large area of the photo, but also the building on the background, which was originally covered by me, was also coming with all sorts of texture and signs of its age. Once again, the iPhone is finally doing a great job here. They've clearly put great effort into upgrading their photo editing tool. All the textures there is actually pretty accurate, I would say. So in my opinion, the Galaxy and Google Photos actually captured that rundown vibe better, and the generated part of the photo actually blends into the rest of the photo smoother. A similar story here, the one generated by the Xiaomi, Vivo and Oppo actually looked great, but if we take a closer look here, the 60-year-old building on the photo generated by the Vivo and the Oppo actually looks like it's brand new. Xiaomi is doing a slightly better job for this particular one. And finally, here we have the Honors. Now, as an Android phone, Google Photos can also be considered as native, so no one's losing here. For this particular one, the Galaxy, the Vivo, iPhone and Google Photos on the Sony is actually doing a really great job. Alright, as it's crossing the 14 minutes mark here, the next set of photo will be the last one, which we are really looking into it. It will be a more practical one as I'm keeping the main subject, myself, while simply removing all the passersby on the background. Now, the iPhone this time around is really doing a great job. As we can see here, it even generated 2 statues next to every window, one for each side of the window. We've also got a really compelling photo here out of the Galaxy and the Sony using Google Photos as well, though I must say the iPhone's showing significant improvement once we've got iOS 27 on board. And in addition, all the Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo and Honor have done a remarkable job this time around. Now, speaking of photography, it's not only about AI-generated photo, is it? If you're interested in how the phones compare to each other in day-to-day photography, the Vivo, Xiaomi, Oppo and Honor are absolutely pushing the limit when it comes to mobile photography. So if I really have to pick one particular smartphone for the biggest year-over-year improvement, it would absolutely be the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8. The telephoto camera here is a major breakthrough. Even in low-light and challenging situations like these, low-light portrait photo using the built-in flash is a major step up compared to the current generation of Galaxy and iPhone. It's now actually delivering top-notch low-light performance just like the Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi and Honor. Even if we're pointing the camera directly towards the night sky, the highlight area is not overexposed, while the shadows actually properly exposed this time around with minimal digital noise. It's a rare once in every 5 years huge upgrade for Sony. Now, Xiaomi, Vivo and Oppo have their own collaboration with legendary camera brands. They certainly have their own color science and they actually excel in ultra-long-range zoom. But before we're turning it into a deep dive camera review, which we had a dedicated video for it, it's almost hitting the 1 hour mark. For the past hour, I've edited the same set of 12 photos, so the workload for each phone we've tested should be around the same. Now, the iPhone's got 95% of its battery left, 96% here on the Galaxy and 97% here on the Sony. It's worth noticing, however, the first few percent usually drops a little bit slower than the rest of the journey, and we have 96% here on the Xiaomi, 100% here on the Vivo. No battery was used over the past hour. Now we'll be draining it all the way down to 0, so it's a fair test. 99% here on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, and here we have the foldables, the Honor Magic V6 97%, 98% here on the Oppo Find N6, and 99% here on the Honor Magic 8 Pro, which has the largest battery across the board this time around. Right, at the end of every round of the upcoming battery test, we'll be having a bar chart comparing the battery used over the last hour. Right, the upcoming rounds, as we're definitely having results that's going all over the place here for the first round. So for a fairer comparison for the rest of the journey, we'll definitely have to drain the battery to lower than 90% on all phones to get a more accurate result. In this case, for the upcoming hour, we'll be running AnTuTu benchmark 4 times in a row. On one hand, we'll be able to get some benchmark scores, while on the other hand, what's really worth our attention is heat control and performance output over the hour. Right, as I was trying to explain how controlled the experiment is here, it's almost been an hour there on the battery drain test timeline. Now we'll be taking a look at the surface temperature on the back of each phone. The camera plateau design and the aluminium chassis here on the iPhone is definitely doing its job. The surface temperature here stayed at below 41 degrees Celsius. Now anything below 44 will be warm to touch at most, so nothing's major here. 50 is the actual warning mark. Now the Xiaomi's gone up to 46.5 and 45.6 here on the Vivo, slightly higher on the Oppo 47.7, 42.6 here on the Honor, and that's the Magic 8 Pro. As I was totally shocked by the Honor Magic V6 here, as the back of the phone only went up to 36.7 degrees Celsius. It's almost like the surface temperature of the skin, and 56.4 degrees Celsius here on the Oppo Find N6, which I found the phone a bit hot to touch. Don't get me wrong, the phone which stayed the coolest doesn't necessarily mean it's the best one out there. It's always about balance, as the result here shows that the Vivo and the Oppo, which the manufacturer allowed the phone to run at a slightly higher temperature, they're delivering higher and more stable performance across the hour. And another good news is Sony's finally nailed performance output and heat control. It's actually got similar performance output and surface temperature as the Galaxy. Now, the Oppo Find N6 actually delivered top-notch performance on the first run. The phone's running at higher temperature, though the second, third and the fourth run actually delivered similar performance as the Honor Magic V6. So we may conclude here Honor's doing a really great job when it comes to thermal management and heat control on a foldable. And finally, here we've crossed the 2 hour mark of the battery drain test. test, we have 70% of the battery left here on the iPhone 17 Pro Max, 74% on the Galaxy, 77% here on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8, not bad at all. Now we have 71% here on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, which has a 6000 mAh battery, 76% here on the Vivo. Raw performance output is higher at a cost of higher battery drain as well. Now the Oppo Find X9 Ultra here, 76% as well. On the contrary, 84% here on the Honor Magic 8 Pro. It's clear that Honor is not chasing the benchmark race in favor of better battery life. Similar story here on the Honor Magic VIII. We had lower benchmark scores, but 87% of the battery is still here, and the phone actually stayed cool along the way. And finally, we have 71% here on the Oppo Find N6, the same figure we've got on the Xiaomi, which has also got a 6000 mAh battery. Now we're actually having rather similar battery drain across the iPhone, the Galaxy, the Sony, and pretty much everyone. Except the Honors, they're pairing up large batteries and more conservative performance output. So based on the same rate, we're looking at 4 to 5 hours of screen on time when it comes to ultra heavy duty stuffs, possibly turning on maximum graphics on your heavy duty games. Right, just to let the phones cool down a bit, the upcoming 2 hours I'll be playing YouTube videos here. This is mainly due to it's expected to have a smaller figure when it comes to video playback, so 2 hours of YouTube video playback will be having a more accurate battery drain result when we're calculating the estimated battery life for this particular task. You're right, we're using the cover display for the battery drain test this time around on the foldable phones. We'll definitely be doing it again using the inner display when it comes to the battery drain test for foldable phones only later this year. Once again, as we're talking about the foldables, it's crossed the 4 hours mark. We've got 63% of the battery here on the iPhone, 65% here on the Galaxy, and 67% here on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8. The Xiaomi 17 Ultra is at a similar level here, 63%. And we have 68% here on the Vivo X300 Ultra, and we've got 1 more % here on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra. Now we've actually got 79% here on the Honor Magic V6, a foldable phone which is leading the competition right now. And we have 61% here on the Oppo Find N6, which is the same as the Xiaomi, and 78% here on the Honor Magic 8 Pro. The two Honors actually performing shockingly similar to each other. Now for YouTube video playback, we're actually having similar results across the board. So despite we're having a 5000 mAh battery here on the Galaxy and the Sony, and an even smaller 4823 mAh battery on the iPhone, on the global version with a proper SIM card slot, we're actually looking at decent figures across the board, 20 hour plus for YouTube videos playback at 250 nits. Alright, for the upcoming 9 hours, I'll be leaving them here flipped over just to make sure I won't be touching them at all. Alright, it's a great 8-hour sleep, and I just got barely enough of time to finish breakfast before coming back. After exactly 9 hours, 58% of the battery is here on the iPhone. We've actually got 2 more % here on the Galaxy, and 2 more on the Sony. Now the Xiaomi is actually performing really similarly here at 60%, 65% here on the Vivo X300 Ultra, and 66% here on the Oppo. Now the foldables, we've actually got 74% here on the Honor Magic V6, while we have the first phone which has dropped below 60, 57% here on the Oppo Find N6, and last but not least, the Honor Magic 8 Pro, we have 75% here. Great news for Vivo and Oppo, actually for Xiaomi and Honor as well. Battery drain on Wi-Fi while idling overnight seems to be improved over the years. We're actually looking at really similar results across the board. Moving on to the 5th round of today's test, we'll be recording 4K videos on every phone here. Just to keep things as fair as possible here, I've lifted them up slightly with a pencil underneath. This way we can clearly tell they're actually recording something here. Now another measure which I've used to keep the test as fair as possible, I've kept the focus and exposure locked. For sure, real-world battery consumption for video recording could be higher due to software and hardware stabilization. Alright, 1 hour's passed, 37% here on the iPhone, the same 37% here on the Galaxy, and 37% of the battery still left here on the Sony as well. 34% here on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, 48% on the Vivo X300 Ultra, the same 48% figure here on the Oppo as well. Now the foldables, it's really interesting to see that the Honor Magic V6 actually leading the race here with 57% of the battery left, 32% here on the Oppo Find N6, and 53% left on the Honor Magic 8 Pro. Now, as we can see here, the Vivo X300 Ultra, the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, and the Honor Magic V6 are actually draining less battery when it comes to 4K video recording, while the rest of the devices here actually used a similar amount of battery in terms of percentage over the past hour. We are looking at around 6 hours of 4K video recording across the Vivo, Oppo, and Honor. The foldable Honor here, and ranging from 4 to almost 5 hours for the rest of the competition. Alright, the upcoming hour we have a medium demanding task. Here I've got the same playlist of short videos on Instagram playing on every phone here, just to make sure they will be playing similar content across the hour and using similar amount of internet resources, trying to eliminate as many uncontrollable variables as possible here. Alright, it's been 1 hour, we've got 32% here on the iPhone, 30% here on the Galaxy. It seems like the Instagram app's using less battery on the iPhone, and 30% here on the Sony as well. Now we have 24% here on the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, and 41% here on the Vivo X300 Ultra, 42% on the Oppo. Right, the Honor Magic V6 still got 50% left after all the tests. By comparison here on the Oppo Find N6 we've got 23%, and 46% here on the Honor Magic 8 Pro. Now it could be Apple's really good at optimizing their battery, or the Instagram app's actually better optimized for iOS. It's using less battery here, though not by a huge margin. Based on the same rate, you'll be able to stay on Instagram for 20 hours on the iPhone, 12.5 hours on the Galaxy, and 14.3 hours on the Sony, more than 16.5 hours on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, and more than 14 hours on the Honor Magic 8 Pro. Now, the upcoming one will be a mixture of basic task and a little bit of AI. I'll be using another phone to play another video of mine, while at the same time the phones here will be using the built-in voice recorder app to record what I was saying in the video. Now, the Sony doesn't even have a built-in voice recorder app, so I used a third-party one instead. It certainly gets the job done, even down to instant speech-to-text. So here we have a voice recording, a transcript of it, and a summary of it. And time truly flies here, it's been 1 hour. The iPhone's got 26% of its battery left, 19% here on the Galaxy, and the same 19% here on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8, 16% here on the Xiaomi. Now the Vivo X300 Ultra's actually got 31% thanks to the larger battery, 5% more, 36% here on the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, and the Honor Magic V6, surprisingly we've got 45% here, while 12% here on the Oppo Find N6, last but not least 40% here on the Honor Magic 8 Pro. For the past hour, we're actually using less battery on the iPhone, the Honor Magic V6 and the Honor Magic 8 Pro, the Oppo Find X9 Ultra as well. Based on the same rate, we'll be able to record a meeting all the way up to 20 hours here on the Honor Magic V6 with an instant transcript all the way. More than 16.5 hours on the iPhone, the Oppo Find X9 Ultra and the Honor Magic 8 Pro. Alright, the next round is usually the last round of our battery drain test, as phones usually start to march into the sub 20% territory at this point. Now here we've got two different levels of graphics test. On 3D Mark we have a more demanding test, Solar Bay with ray tracing, and a more medium to light basic one, Wildlife. We'll be running the stress test version of them for an entire hour. So now at 7 hours and 47 minutes here on the Oppo Find N6, it's jumped into the battery saving mode, though we can actually bypass it by selecting 3D Mark once again here, despite it's meant for basic tasks only at this point. At the same time, we can actually look at performance output as well for gaming. The Galaxy is topping the chart as expected thanks to the For Galaxy edition of the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, which essentially is an overclocked version of it. So for anything above 120 can be overkill at this point, as we've got 120 Hz of refresh rate on the display after all. And the more advanced Solar Bay Unlimited, we're having slightly reduced performance here on the Honor Magic V6. In return, we're having better thermals and more mild battery consumption, as once again the Oppo is topping the chart but is using more battery and generated slightly more heat as well. Now at 7 hours and 52 minutes, the Oppo Find N6 calling it a day. Now the second one, which is rushing home, could be the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. Both of them's got a 6000 mAh battery and is based on the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. At 7 hours and 53 minutes, it's got a low battery warning here. The phone's actually going to turn off by itself in 30 seconds, and the phone lasted for 7 hours and 54 minutes. While at the exact same moment, we've got 5% here on the Galaxy and 5% here on the Sony as well. Who's calling it a day first is hitting the 8-hour mark, and at 8 hours and 3 minutes, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8 is taking some rest. So just a few minutes later, actually 2 minutes to be exact, the Galaxy S26 Ultra is also calling it a day. Right, the next one that's running out of juice is the Vivo X300 Ultra. It lasted for 8 hours and 9 minutes. It's got a 6600 mAh battery as well, though the more aggressive performance output might have caused the slightly reduced battery life. Now the next one actually almost outlasted it by half an hour. In 8 hours and 32 minutes, the Oppo Find X9 Ultra is running out of battery. It's also 1 hour since we've been running the graphics test. Now here we've got 2% of the battery still left here on the iPhone. 15% here on the Honor Magic V6 and 10% here on the Honor Magic 8 Pro. Right, for phones which have survived the designed battery life test, the normal procedure here is playing YouTube videos for an hour, recording 4K videos for another hour, and going through into the benchmark for another hour, repeating these 3 until the battery dies. So for this particular situation, playing YouTube videos for an hour will be totally unfair for everyone which have finished the test already. So we'll be sticking with 4K video recording here. After 8 hours and 38 minutes, the iPhone 17 Pro Max finally leaving us with a black screen, leaving the Honor Magic V6 and the Honor Magic 8 Pro being the only 2 survivors here. Mind you, it's not a video sponsored by Honor, as we are about to put every phone which we've tested previously with the same rundown onto the same bar chart in a moment. Phones with even larger battery, for instance the Poco X8 Pro Max, certainly delivers even longer battery life. We're almost passing the 9-hour mark here, and the Honor Magic 8 Pro's finally going home after 9 hours and 1 minute. In this case, the battery life king for this particular round would be the Honor Magic V6, which is totally out of my expectation. And after 9 hours and 17 minutes, the Honor Magic V6 finally also called it a day. Right, as promised, the comparison graph is here. Now, the Oppo Find N6, Xiaomi 17 Ultra, the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 8, Galaxy S26 Ultra, and the Vivo X300 Ultra all delivered battery life closer to 8 hours based on this particular test. 8.5 hours for the Oppo Find X9 Ultra and the iPhone 17 Pro Max. At the same time, it's actually really interesting to see both the Vivo X300 Pro and the Oppo Find X9 Pro, which are rocking the Dimensity 9500 processor, delivered longer battery life compared to their Ultra models, which is based on the Snapdragon chip. Now, the Oppo Find X9 Pros actually got a 7500 mAh battery, so that makes sense. And ultimately, the Poco X8 Pro Max, which has got an 8500 mAh battery, is still topping the chart by a huge margin. And here we've got a table listing out the battery in percentage used by every phone for every task. For quick and easy comparison, we may stay here for a couple of seconds. Now, the last round, which some of the phones I've highlighted in red, that's due to those particular phones actually ran out of battery before that particular hour ended. It actually directly drained the battery from 36% here on the Oppo to 0. It's a fair test, as we've done the same thing across every phone we've tested, though it might not be representing how we use the phone from day to day. In this case, taking out the last round, which is 3D Mark graphics test and overnight idling, I've calculated an adjusted estimated battery life here. The Honor Magic V6 still leading the race, delivering 12 hours and 46 minutes of battery life, followed by the Honor Magic 8 Pro delivering 12 hours and 17 minutes of screen on time. The second runner-up would be the Oppo Find X9 Ultra, sustaining 11 hours and 29 minutes of screen on time. The Vivo X300 Ultras coming in fourth, slightly more than 10.5 hours, closely followed by the iPhone. Now, the Sony Xperia and the Samsung Galaxy is delivering about 9.5 hours and 9 hours and 15 minutes, leaving the Xiaomi 17 Ultra and the Oppo Find N6, which might use some software optimization. Right, so that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and see you all next time.